When Mike announced a couple years ago, hey, I'm going to retire, and then it was like, oh, never mind.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that got you thinking
Yeah.
about what's next. Is
Yep.
that when that sort of triggered,
Yeah.
hey, I could try to become
Yes.
this role?
Yes, it definitely did. It was something too that he's very open, right? Like he'll tell you anything. And so it was just helpful through conversations with him of understanding that I didn't have to be him, but I could make this my own. I could make this role my own. And he always said, take the good and leave the bad. And that was really helpful, right? Being young and just kind of starting out in this and thinking of Kearney, which is an amazing city, and it's a fairly large city in central Nebraska and has a pretty significant stamp in Nebraska, seemed a little daunting and overwhelming. And so just through conversations with him and time and education and training, right, it kind of all started to take shape. But yeah, it was not what I had expected. Let's just say that in the best way possible, honestly.
So you're not from here. Dalton's not from here.
Correct.
Obviously, you're following his career in some respects,
Yep.
but you still have to choose to stay here.
Yes.
Why have you chosen to stay in Kearney?
It's become our home. We don't have any family that lives here, but we have friends that have become our family. We've got relationships that, if we need something, if Dalton's out of town for wrestling and I have a flat tire, right? I've got people I can call, where before I would just rely on my dad or one of my brothers. But it's just truly become our home. I don't know how else to say it other than we can't imagine leaving. Kearney is such a special place, and we just can't imagine living anywhere else, really.
You've mentioned the influence of Mike Morgan, the 19-year city manager.
Yeah.
What are some specific things that you picked up from being right underneath him?
Yeah, how we operate, right? At the end of the day, as an organization and an employer, we employ 340 people full and part-time, and then about 250 seasonals throughout the year too. We're a family-first organization, and we care about our employees. We care about safety. We care about having pride in the work that we do for the community that we serve. And so that was one of the things that I learned through him, is how to do that from a leadership standpoint. But then also, how do we care for our community? How do we show that we listen and that we're here to provide service and solutions to them? I think he did a really good job. Obviously, I can't speak to the time what it was like in Kearney before he was here, but from my experience and what I witnessed is the trust in local government, and that comes from doing what we say we're going to do. And again, being a phone call away, or someone can walk in the front door and talk to an employee and we're going to help you. And I think that speaks volumes too. And it's all those little things. They all add up and they all speak to the full culmination of that trust and respect within our community, and providing that high level of service and doing everything we can for the people who live here or own a business here or just visit here. I think it's all important. And so it's so many little things, little lessons that I learned from Mike, and they sunk in. They make a difference.
You're describing what people think is a small town feel, where
Yep.
there's a personal level between the government and the citizen.
Yep.
But Kearney also views itself as a progressive city.
Yep.
The growth is undeniable.
Yep.
My first 6 months here, I covered more groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings than the previous 5 years.
Yes, I love that.
How do you balance the desire for being personal in small town with the city's desire to grow?
Yeah, that's actually a really great point. And not something that we should take for granted. I think that takes effort. We have to be open to new ideas. We have to be willing to consider, when someone knocks on the door and says, hey, we want to build in Kearney or develop or expand, we have to be willing to have those conversations. But we can't forget that at the end of the day, there are also people who have lived here for, their entire life, 70 years, who might need a meal at the senior center that we need to be able to offer them. So I think it takes doing both things. It takes being willing to be open to new ideas, and it also takes providing that service and being willing to answer the phone or help the person who walks in the door. That's the small town feel. And then the progressive side is always welcoming the new ideas and the things that we can do differently.
Not every city wants to be calling itself progressive,
Yeah.
not whether it's the community or the government level, or some just want that but can't achieve it.
Yeah.
what makes Kearney such a desirable place for businesses, educational institutions, and generally people want to choose to grow into?
Yeah, mostly I would say it's from the people who have made their mark in Kearney. And there's quite a few developers who have done that, who have been willing to maybe take the risk at first or make the investment at first to try new things and try different things. There's definitely a few names in the community that have done that. And then we have to follow it up. The county has to follow it up. The school has to follow it up. UNK to provide that quality of life then to support it. Because you can attract people here, right, for a short term or even just maybe it's 6 months for a job, but how do you get them to stay? And that's where all of us entities from a service standpoint or quality of life standpoint come in and have to make sure that we match the quality of life and what we offer and provide to what the developers or the business people are willing to make that investment in. So it goes hand in hand.
So you were deputy city clerk and kind of knew this date was coming, that
Yep.
when Mike would step down,
Yep.
you became interim for 4.5 months.
Yep.
They said 6. So you
Yeah.
cut it a little bit short. Was there much of a learning curve, or did you feel like, I kind of knew what I was getting into here?
Yeah, I think I knew what I was getting into. Definitely a learning curve. Our office is adjoined and the door was always open, so I could always hear what was going on. But until it's on your shoulders and you're the one that's making those decisions, you can't maybe really prepare for that. But I think what I've learned and what I've grown confidence in is it's just you have resources that you can rely on, and at the end of the day you just have to do what you think is best and you make that decision and you go from there. And sometimes, this is another thing I learned from Mike, sometimes you admit that you made a mistake and you pivot from there. But training, I think I could do all the training in the world and still wouldn't have been quite ready. And so it's just willing to take that leap. I'm very, very fortunate that we've got experienced council members. We've got experienced department heads who are there to support me when I needed help. I can always call Mike too, which is wonderful that he's still in town and, offering his support whenever it's needed.
Is there anything that you've learned that was unexpected, or a moment of growth that you can point to from your first 8 months?
No, not one particular moment, other than just trying to figure out what's next in Kearney, right? So I think that's been something that at times as I do different interviews or go and speak with different user groups, we talk about the Sportsplex, or we talk about getting Sky West back, different exciting things that are happening in the community. But then people ask, well, then what's after that? That's part of Kearney too, and that progressive, going back to your point about the progressive nature, that is part of, people always want to know what's next, and that's part of what feeds the progressiveness of our community. We've opened Yanni Gardens, the Yanni Pavilion. We've added splash pads in almost every neighborhood park. We've expanded hike bike trails. We've added whitewater. So what is next? And I think that's one of the things that maybe from my standpoint is I might have ideas, but I've realized, and we all realize collectively, that we need to hear from the community about what's next. So it's something that we've started conversations on with a couple of other key entities in the community. Maybe this kind of winter time frame, starting some listening sessions again. It was something that they had done, years ago. I think we've crossed off a lot of things on the list, and so I think we need to go back and say, hey, Kearney community, what is next? What do we want the next 10 to 20 years of Kearney to look like? And I, as city manager, might have ideas about what that is, but I think it's important that we listen to the community about what they want to see.
Do you expect this will be a formal effort with, you attach a name to it, do a campaign and say, hey, here's how you can weigh in, and then we're going to use that to build a plan?
Yep, that's exactly it. We've had one conversation, fairly recently about it, but I think that it's something that there's a lot of excitement behind internally, and so it's something that I think we would like to push out. I believe they used to do it called Kearney Tomorrow, and probably the last one I think that they had held was, I think, in the early 2000s. And so maybe we bring that back. Maybe it's branded that way and we do that again. Again, what does Kearney look like in the future? What's next? 2025, I've been saying that a lot over the past 8 months. I think 2025 is kind of a pivotal year in Kearney. The Sportsplex opens. two more hotels open, part of Eunice Landing. You got 2 cancer centers that will open shortly, followed behind the expansion of the UNMC Rural Health Education Building. And so that's going to be a pretty big year in and of itself of growth and change, not necessarily change in a completely flipped sense, but, just that, pick a better word, just a pivot or a moment, I guess, of I think we can point back to, wow, 2025 was a big year of growth in Kearney's history. There were a lot of new things that opened, and that's exciting in and of itself too, right? So I think that'll be crucial. Mona will open back up. Rose expansion will be done. Again, you point to a lot of things that have been evolving in Kearney over the past couple of years that will be kind of coming to fruition, and the community will be able to experience it and enjoy all those things too. So, but then what happens in 2026 and 2027 and 2030 and 2035? Yeah, what happens after that?
So do you catch your breath, or do you dive right back in and keep building?
Yeah. I don't think you catch your breath. I think that's how Kearney's been successful, is it's always been what's next. And so I think it's important that we keep the foot on the pedal, and we keep evolving, and we keep growing, and ultimately not, though, at the expense of losing out on the quality of life and that kind of small town feel. And so that's something we've talked about a lot too. Is there a point where you're too big, or is there, so how do you maintain that balance? So I think you keep the foot on the pedal, but you still always be willing to reflect on what are those decisions that you're making? How are they having an impact? And do we need to slow down, or do we need to pivot and do something a little bit different? So you can't always look forward. I think you have to at times look backwards too.
You'll be doing it with a little bit different group of people.
Yeah.
Mayor Stan Klaus,
Yep.
Bruce Lear won't be on the council anymore. There's new leadership at UNK, other changes as well. How do you anticipate working with some new leaders to have new, fresh ideas and energize the community?
Yeah, I think it's important to build the relationship first. That's just kind of my mentality from a leadership standpoint, is to build those relationships. You never want to have your first conversation be when it's, in the middle of an emergency or having an issue. And so building the relationships first, but again, being open to new ideas, being open to, what some new council members might bring to the table, what a new mayor might bring to the table, new leaders, right? A lot of the leaders who are coming from to different entities like Mona or the YMCA are coming from outside of Kearney too. So they're going to bring a whole different perspective, which I think is exciting and a great opportunity to learn from whatever community they came from before and what worked well there. I joke a lot. Mike had 2 new city council members the 19 years he was here, and I will have 2, potentially 3 new council members within my first year as city manager. So it just doesn't seem quite fair, but I actually think it's a great opportunity. We'll miss, obviously, Bruce and Stan for sure. They provided a lot of fantastic leadership over the last couple of decades, but I think we'll survive, right? We'll get through it, and it'll be a good thing for Kearney to continue moving forward.
Oh, you mentioned a couple of big projects in the airport and the sportsplex.
Yep.
Sky West, that just became official.
Yep.
It's returning.
Yep.
And I'm sure the next question you got after, hey, is Sky West coming back, is, hey, is Chicago's flight coming back?
Yeah, literally, yes. I already got an email about it. So SkyWest obviously was our provider before when we had the daily flights to Denver and to Chicago. At this point in time, it's just Denver. It helps that they've done it before and it was fairly successful. But post-COVID, the airline industry has changed a little bit. They've kind of indicated that too, that, hey, we need to rebuild what we had before we look at expanding even more. We've explained the importance of Chicago to the Kearney community, to SkyWest, so they know it's a priority for us. But we'd have to look at how could we get that implemented. So they have a 3-year bid for the EAS contract for the 2 daily flights to Denver. So obviously we have that secured now. But, we will not forget about Chicago. I know that much. It'll always be a question that comes up. And so it's a priority for the community. How do we make that happen?
It seemed to be going well, and enplanements were high. And that wasn't why they dropped out of their last contract. It was a
Correct.
pilot shortage.
Correct.
What did they do in conversations with the city, Department of Transportation, to say, we're not going to drop out of this next contract?
Yeah, so actually, Department of Transportation at the federal level, there was a few law changes made. There's actually some penalties in place now if you do try to break your contract, where before that wasn't necessarily the case. I think there was not just SkyWest. I think there was other instances nationwide where things were happening because of the pilot shortage, and so they just weren't able to provide the service. And so DOT has made a few changes with those contracts. The contract is between SkyWest and DOT. We just happen to be the outfit where they operate out of, and so there's not a whole lot contractually that they can do with us other than reaffirm the fact that their pilot numbers are back to where they were prior to COVID. And there again, there's just been some shifts nationwide in the airline industry, and so it has maybe helped stabilize things to where they feel comfortable getting back into some of the communities that they had to drop service in 2022. So we're very excited to have SkyWest back. Very appreciative to Denver Air Connection and the service that they provided for the 2 years that they were here. They've been a great partner. Not very often we get to say that we've got one of the owners of the airline on cell phone that we can call if we have a problem, and that they've been fantastic from that standpoint. They really have been, and so we're very appreciative. But the Kearney community is excited to have United branded flights back, and we're very excited for what the future of air service at Kearney Regional Airport looks like.
Now, there's no shortage of excitement for the Sportsplex.
Yes.
And when you drive by there, it's amazing the progress made on construction.
Yep.
Once it gets to the time that opens, what does the city need to do to make sure it goes smoothly?
Yeah, so we've had Lauren Brandt, our Sportsplex director. She's been with the city in her role for, I think, about 18 months now, which at some people thought, why would you bring someone on so early? But honestly, it has proved extremely beneficial from the standpoint of she's really overseen from the ownership standpoint. The construction of the building, is able to make the decisions when needed on site. But then she's also planning all of her operations. She's been marketing mostly it's happening through word of mouth, but to start securing contracts. So she's got contracts secured out through 2029 for certain weekends for different events. Half of the weekends in 2026, I believe half of the weekends of the year are full already with different events. And so from that standpoint too, and bringing a facility like that online that has that sports tourism standpoint has been crucial to show that the concept is there, right? And that proof of concept is going to work, because we've already got people who are interested in hosting tournaments here. And so she's been able to work through, what does that look like? How does that work? But then also, because she's been here and is working through the sports tourism side of things, but she's done a really good job of realizing that this was voted on by the people of Kearney for this project, to support the bond for the project. And so there's that community aspect too. And so how do we fill that need? And so she's been going to user group meetings and listening to them and taking input and really kind of crafting schedules so that we have options for drop-in play. We have times for the club basketball team to schedule to secure a court or two for practice on 3 nights a week or whatever it might look like. And so to start working on what that balance is. And then she's worked on her staffing plan and equipment orders. If you walk in her office, I joke with her, because obviously she has a temporary office because the Sportsplex isn't open yet. So it's here at City Hall right now, but she's got boxes everywhere, 'cause she's been getting shipments, because as she's realizing she needs to be ordering things so that we have it here when we're ready to open. And she's got literally color-coded, labeled based on what rooms they're going to go in once the Sportsplex is open. And so just being organized, prepared, having the time to really think through all of our policies, procedures, to build the website, to build the marketing materials, to the social media, to get out to the user groups, to do all of that. She's been doing all that, right? She's the boots on the ground, and she's taken a lot of ownership over it for the community and on behalf of the city, and she's done a fantastic job. So I have no doubt this is going to go well. I say that with the caveat, of course there's going to be things that we're going to learn along the way, but yeah, she's done a great job, and so I'm excited for what next year looks like with the Sportsplex.
That's a huge influence in the south side of town. And the expansion of the Eunice campus mirrors that.
Yep.
If you left town in 2020 and came back, that south side of town
Yeah.
would look completely different
Yep.
in just a 5 year stretch. How does that section of the city have an effect on everything? How much of a difference does the sportsplex and the other amenities have in how Kearney operates?
Yeah. So it's a significant impact in a positive way. It's basically a town within a town, right? There's at any given time 5,000 people down there. I think the Unisys estimate they have about 750,000 people throughout the year that are there for different conventions and at the hotels, and then we're estimating 250 to 300,000 at the sportsplex, which are convention, and then if you're there for a tournament or something is a little bit of a different crowd. So that's 1 million people throughout a year that will be down in that area of town. And I think there's a balance too of making sure that they experience the rest of Kearney and all that Kearney has to offer, but from a tourism and just sales tax and things that help support what we do in Kearney and how we have the things that we have in Kearney, it's been extremely influential in a positive thing. And they're also adding amenities. The sportsplex is amenity, and then the things that, as the Eunice campus expands, brings more restaurants or more entertainment options to the community too, right? It's not just for tourists who are here for the week. It's also for our community members to enjoy too. So it'll be, they've got, I joke with Paul all the time, I can hardly keep up with him. His vision is pretty amazing, and what they have a vision for the rest of their campus is extremely impressive. And so I'm excited to see them bring it to life.